Hello, everybody, and I just want to welcome you all to another episode of RG22 Outdoor Adventures. And in this episode, we are going to be making a musky crankbait. Um, the wood that we're using are two planks of poplar that are epoxied together, and I let them dry for a day. Um, and then took the wood, drew out the shape that I wanted, and the shape is in the shape of the style of a grandma crankbait or one of those Jake crankbaits, flat-sided. And as you can see in the video, that we are actually cutting the blank right now. So continue watching, and we'll explain a little bit more as we continue on after the blank is done. Okay, so we basically have the blank done at this point. Right now, I'm just kind of making some final cuts on it to kind of clean things up. We're on the drill press, and when I am getting ready to make the eye sockets, what I like to do is, in order to get them to be symmetrical on both sides, I like to kind of drill a hole through the blank and on the drill press to mark where the eye sockets are going to be. Over here, we're getting ready to cut out. We've measured and marked the slot for the diving lip, and now we are getting ready to cut it all out on the bandsaw. So we make two cuts, and then we cut the middle out, and then we clean it up with either the inside with either a file or some sandpaper. And we should have a tight enough fit that when we're doing all of our preliminary test fitting, there's no need to put any tape on it or glue it up. It should be nice and tight. Okay, so through this part of the video on this section, you're noticing that I already have a diving lip cut out. It's from a piece of acrylic that you can get at any hardware store, or you can use Lexan. In this instance, on this lure, I elected to use a thicker material, and I decided to use the acrylic. Um, Basically, you cut it out with your bandsaw. You mark it up, measure it, draw it out, cut it, and then you start using sandpaper to really start refining the edges, smoothing everything out, and getting that final shape. You can make it as smooth or as rough as you want. If you want to get it really smooth, you go all the way down to your final grit sandpaper, and then you can take a leather strop and really smooth it out, and it almost is like glass when you're done. Um, so just kind of watch along here as we sand everything down, and we're going to continue on with the next steps of the lure. This is always a fun part here. Look, when you get everything done, you get the lure, you get the blank smoothed out, the shape kind of where you want it, your eyes drilled out a little bit, the diving lip, and then you kind of put that lip in the slot to test fit it to see how it's going to look, and it actually starts looking like a lure. And this is where actually it really gets to be really fun when you're making these lures, seeing the actual shape and how everything's potentially going to look. What I'm doing here is I'm kind of explaining that I'm gonna carve out the edges smooth them out, round them out. And then I'm showing where we're going to possibly put some lead holes or ballast weight to get the lure to sit straight up and down, and potential hook locations and a location for the actual tie-on where we tie the line to the lure. So like I said, this is probably the one part that other than actually finishing it and painting it, is actually seeing what the lure looks like and kind of envisioning how it's swimming in the water. Unfortunately, sorry for the bad camera angles. I'm still trying to figure out where the field of view is. We're actually starting to carve the edges off and round them out before we put it into the vise where we're going to actually start sanding it down. So you can kind of watch this and enjoy the carving. I should mention that if you're going to be carving and using knives, to be very careful that you don't cut yourself. And always, always, always use a sharp knife. Sharp knives are always safer than dull knives. Just a little public service announcement for you guys that are watching. Okay, so what you're seeing here is you're pretty much seeing the lure rounded off, just the edges rounded off with the knife. Didn't do a whole lot of carving. And then over here, I'm taking some pretty coarse grit sandpaper and really just working on these edges, trying to round them out, keep the flat sides, and working the back of the lure, and then we'll go to the front, and then obviously we're going to flip it around, and we'll do the underneath as well, but not as much because we need room for drilling out the lead holes for the ballast. So you can continue watching this clip, and you can watch us sanding, going from coarse grit to an ever so finer grit, and eventually we will be sanding everything with the lure not in the vise. So continue watching, and thank you. Okay, now that we got the rough sanding done, we're starting to see that the lure is actually starting to take shape. At this point, what I was gonna do after this is where I start taking the actual regular sandpaper, and we start getting this really smooth and finishing it off. At this point, where you saw where I had the holes marked on the eyes, now we're going to start drilling out the eye socket. So I may have to do this a couple times. So I may not have the depth correct, and I want it a little bit deeper so the eyes aren't bulging out. And I want to try to get them as equal as I can. So again, like I said, this is the part I really like, where we finally get the final sanding done, and I start drilling out the eye sockets. We got the lip in, and now it's actually starting to look like something. Here, so there's a lot of different methods you can use to attach hooks to the lure body. You can use regular rings with eyes on them, through wire, or you can do these, take regular stainless steel wire. I think in this case it's 0.05 something that I got. You can get it from Amazon. and we're going to twist it with our drill and make some twist eyes. So you can follow along and see how that's done. So altogether on this lure, it's going to require 4 twist eyes. Depending upon how many hooks I want to put in, it would take more or less. It's going to have 3 hooks, and then it's going to have the regular attachment point where the line gets attached to the lure. So there's 4 twist wires. At this point now, I've marked the holes, and now I'm going to start drilling the holes. I'm going to start drilling the holes for the twist wire. I want to do it slightly at a smaller opening so that way I can twist the wire in and use some epoxy to hold it all together. So now we'll get all 3 wires drilled, or holes drilled for all 4, 4 wires drilled. Kind of get them all measured out, make them as deep as possible. Also, I marked out with a tool to where I wanted to put the lead holes. So I'm going to start out with a couple, fill them up with lead, and then take the lure, put it in our test tank, and see how it floats, whether it floats straight up and down or whether it floats to one side or the other. And we're going to continue using lead, making lead holes until we have it sitting just how we want it. And in theory, it should run perfectly. It should run really nice once we have that and it's all good and stable. So at this point, we're filling the holes up, putting the lure in the test tank, and then drilling holes out if we need more, and filling those up with lead. So you can continue watching, and there we go. So here we have all the lead holes drilled, and we're going to use a super glue and baking soda combination. Stuff dries out really hard, and we sand it off smooth, and then you really, if it's all nice and smooth, you can't even tell that there are any lead holes drilled in that section. So after the lead holes are drilled in, the body is sealed. You can either seal it with a type of polyurethane, or you can use super glue. In this instance, I used really super ultra thin super glue to soak into the wood and create a first seal. The next seal coat I used was some 2-part epoxy. What this will do is it'll make a nice smooth finish that we can sand down a little bit. That will makes the paint come out so much better. Your finishing. So it's a different, a better foundation to use. So we'll continue showing everything here. Okay, so we put the 2-part epoxy on, sanded it down, or actually let it sit overnight, sanded it down. And at this point right now, what we are going to do, we are ready for paint. So we're going to paint our first base coat, and we're going to use and opaque white for our first base coat. Don't worry, that lip is a spare. It's not the actual lip that's going into the lure. Well, okay, so after the white, and it's all dry, we're taking some Createx yellow paint, and we are going to paint just the sides. We'll paint it yellow, as you can see. We'll do both sides. And after that, it's after we've got a nice coat on and we're satisfied with that, and it's good and dry. What you'll see in the next clip coming up is we are going to start mixing some pearlized purple and some pearlized scarlet. And we're going to paint just the top corner and down maybe a little bit on the sides, that purplish scarlet color, the combination. I think it's going to look really cool. It's starting to look like either a really early sunrise or maybe a sunset. But stay tuned and you can keep watching as we're painting. Okay, so here we finished up the purple and scarlet. And there's the final product along with some metallic gold. After that, when all those are done and dry, we're going to take some chartreuse. And I want to put a really light coat of chartreuse on there to kind of liven it up, brighten it up a little bit. So we'll put a very light coat along the sides of the lure on both sides. All right, so now to get the sunrise effect that I was going for, we're going to paint a fluorescent orange across the head and then down the sides, or all the way down the back, and then around the underneath of the lure as well. So they'll kind of give this, to me it kind of looked like when I did it, it started looking kind of like more like a sunrise or a sunshine. So it's kind of what I named this lure. So here you can see how we're adding the color to it and painting it. Okay, so at this point in the build, I'm getting ready to put on my second coat of epoxy. With this particular coat, I put in some glitter, and I'm going to get that painted over and let it set for about maybe until it's tack free. So this particular finish was tack free in about 4 hours, but I gave it a little bit more time. Probably I gave it until the next day because this was done later in the evening. All right, so basically, when this finish was dry, I took it outside, gave it a see how it would look in the sun, and I'll tell you, this color really, really popped, and I don't think I could be any happier with how the color and everything turned out in the sun. So the next few clips will be approximately 24 hours after the finish is set. Okay, so the finish is dried and set. Gave a nice little sanding. And what I'm doing now is, for the very first time, I made some stencils. And I'm actually painting gills on a lure. I've never done this before, so let's see how this goes. Obviously, I made a mistake. So I tried washing it off, and unfortunately that didn't work, so I had to sand it off, and that's what I did. And you'll see we'll start over. But this is what happens when you're learning how to paint gills or do any kind of painting or whatever it is that you learn how to do for the very first time. You're obviously going to screw stuff up, and sometimes you just got to start over. And essentially that's kind of what I did here. I screwed up painting the gills the first time, and well, now I had to fix the mistake, and now we're just kind of redoing it all and going over it again. So at this point I was debating whether or not to continue or just stop painting. I decided I want to put some accent, so I want to paint some little bit of accent color, so I used some white paint. Honestly, I don't know if the white was the appropriate color, but it is what it is, and it's done. So here's a finished product of the gills. Did black and white, and here I'm going to paint an extremely light coat of opaque white here, and then go over it in transparent gray, and then try my best to paint some fin rays, which didn't really turn out all that well. But it is what it is, and I really can't say much about it. This is something I'm just going to have to keep practicing. But I really like this this ghost fin, and I thought about maybe just leaving it there and using a pencil mark to draw the rays of the fins in and just leave it at that. But I didn't. Here I am. Looks like I'm going to start practicing something or another. I don't know. Well, let's see what the rest of the video shows. So here we are doing the fins a little bit more, trying to add some more color to the side, to the edges, and leaving the middle kind of like a ghost type pattern. We do it on one side. We've obviously got to do it on the other side, so you'll probably end up seeing two different fins here. Video here, I actually tried doing the fins, so I did that. So actually here, I'm using glass eyes, so you can buy these glass half domes. These are 1/2 inch in diameter. You can buy these at on Amazon, and you can buy them in whatever size you want to use: 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch. And you could either paint on you can paint the pupils. You can use stencils. You can just use a brush and put a little dab of paint on there, and then go from there and use the brush to completely paint the entire eye. Or in this case, I used stencils to paint the pupil and the iris, and using some steel tape, use that as backing for the eye because it has some sort of reflection. And there you go. So that right there is the finished product. Finish is dry, and here I'm actually starting to get this is 30-minute epoxy, get the epoxy mixed so I can start getting the all the hardware put in. So I'm mixing it all together, and we're going to get started on putting all the eyelets in, and then last we'll get the diving lip in, and then in a couple minutes we're going to actually go out and test it on the water. So I'll just let you guys watch this, and then we'll get to the point where we're testing it on the water. Alright, so here's the minnow lure. It's all done. See if we can get a good picture of it here. There we go. All done. Let's see how it casts. See how it's going to work. And we're going to try this in the spring. Let's make a cast. There's a good cast. And it seems to run true if I just reel it in nice and easy like this. And it only stays about a foot down. So let's see if can you guys see that there? All right, so let's see here. Runs nice. Has a really nice action to it. Really slow, lazy wobble. It doesn't blow out. Runs straight true. Let's see. No, it doesn't blow out at all. Look at that. Oops, that's a bad one. There's another one. Oh yeah. That is going to catch a muskie. That I think will. And it casts beautifully. And if we want to, we can just slow twitch it. Or, yeah, nice little slow rise to it. And it's a little fast. I think the next one I'm going to try to do a neutral buoyancy. Well, I'm excited to say that we've reached 100 subscribers on the channel, and I want to thank everybody for subscribing. So don't forget to like, hit that subscribe button, and share. And again, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.